just give you a bit of a background as to what it's all been about. So I guess it was in about 2000 I had finished a 4.5-year retreat in Spain, and I came back to the UK, and I'd always been interested in environmental issues, and wanted to get up to speed with where things were at in the 2000s. And I was quite concerned by how things had ratcheted up in the intervening time that I'd been away. So I was trying to work out what kind of my next phase of my life would be about, and I decided whatever it was, it needed to be congruent to environmental issues and climate change in particular. And so I was searching around, and I came across forest gardening, and I was really impressed with you know, all the major issues that we have as impacts on the environment, that we humans inflict upon the environment. They all seem to be addressed by growing our food in a forest system. All the environmental impacts seem to be addressed, and not just addressed, but addressed very, very well. So, for instance, you know, forest gardens can sequester carbon in the ground as well as create food. So it's kind of a win-win situation. And forest gardens create soil, obviously create oxygen, they can reduce flooding, they increase biodiversity, they can prevent eutrophication of waterways, and so on and so forth. So yes, all these major impacts that we have upon the planet seem to be addressed through forest gardening. So that seemed like a really good approach. So 2010, my partner at the time, who had a bit of money, we bought this piece of land, and at the time it was a bare horse paddock, completely flat field. In fact, a very, very boring flat field, and very compacted ground, quite windswept. So thus began our journey to create this this world that we now live in. So that's kind of the background and my motivation for doing it, and yeah, don't know what else to say, and perhaps more will be revealed as I do this talk. Yeah, it's a bit frustrating. I actually did this tour last night, so I've done this already, and I got back and the sound didn't seem to be working, even though I had tested it previously, so that was a bit frustrating. So anyway, this is my second attempt, and of course today it's raining, whereas obviously for the last month or so it's been this beautiful fine weather. So anyway, I'll switch the camera around. So this is a space that we've created over time. So we run a lot of courses here. So what we're looking at here, this is actually a stage that we've made. And this concept here is kind of an outdoor living room. So what we wanted to do is not have a space that was too kind of alienated from nature. So there's a little pond that projects into the space here, and then in the far corner, it's a bit messy at the moment, but that's actually a thermal mass rocket stove. So the fire is there, and then the flue goes through the thermal mass, keeping the whole place warm. At the moment we're propagating lots of plants. That's been our with all our events cancelled, we've been propagating lots of our ground cover plants. I could just walk through a few of them. So this plant here, this is a lovely plant which we've had for years but didn't quite know what to do. It's called Good King Henry. So it's a very ancient vegetable, and the best way to eat it, we've discovered, is the very, very young shoots. There's lots of sort of vegetables sort of in that category. If you eat the very young shoots, a bit like an asparagus, I suppose, substitute. And also you can eat the grains on the top. very nice. And then this here we're propagating, this is a Hablitzia, which is a tree spinach, so I'm making little cuttings there. They've just kind of taken, they're quite delicate to get started, but this is basically a perennial spinach which grows very rapidly, grow up into trees and so on and so forth. So we want to just have lots and lots of this all over our forest garden. And then there's a whole range of perennial kales. So this is Dorrington's kale, which we've taken cuttings of. And then over here, this is more Dorrington's kale. And then at the back of the pot there, those are actually tree collards, which they grow much more upright. So they can actually grow 8 foot tall and maybe 20 feet in extent. So all these ways to create these beautiful perennial vegetables. And then there's this one here, this is Aralia cordata, which again, because of the lockdown, we've actually had time to explore how to eat these things. And this is another asparagus like plant where you eat the very, very young shoots just as they're coming out of the ground in the early spring. So it was so nice that again I've ended up propagating a whole lot more. What do we got here? So this is a hardy kiwi. There's many different varieties of hardy kiwi, so we've got two varieties there. And then we're propagating lots of other little plants. So that's actually little sea kale. That's a perennial sea kale, or sea beet I should say. So this is actually the original foundation of all the beet families, like beetroot and sugar beet and so on and so forth. So this goes down on the coast. So what else? And then up here we've got these are cardoons. Again, these you can eat these a bit like asparagus again if you eat the very, very young shoots, especially if you cover the shoots with something dark to make them sort of elongated and tender. So that's really nice. And then, oh, you won't be able to see them here, but under this is a Polonia, which is a nitrogen fixing tree. It's one of the fastest growing trees in the world. So we're going to plant this primarily for its nitrogen fixing capacity, but also it's very useful wood. And so now here I'll just stand back, and this is our event space. And then we've got these lovely wooden carvings that we recently bought, and I think on reflection what we realised is what these offer is just well, maybe it's one of the things that we're really most interested to explore is like, how do you live in a forest garden? And we don't really know what that will be. It's a journey of discovery, but what we are discovering, it's offering a sort of a journey of reconnecting with nature. So it's like, how does the living system of being a human being connect with the living system of the garden that we've created? And we sense this offers possibilities that we haven't kind of allowed ourselves to imagine yet. And so what these carvings allow us to do, what these carvings suggest, is it's a sort of a bridge between the human world. So if you see, all its motifs are sort of natural ornaments, and this is the nature of a lot of traditional architecture, has these natural motifs. And interestingly, modern architecture seems to have shorn itself of ornamentation, which to me maybe is sort of one of the symptoms or expressive of how we've started to alienate ourselves from the natural world. So what we're trying to do here in our human space, we're trying to reference the natural world to create that bridge between here we live as humans, and then there's the natural system out there. So this little space is, during the hot weather, it's just been absolutely gorgeous, because that's basically a hedgerow on the other side of our stage. So this is about like 5 degrees cooler than the rest of the place. So this is one of the themes that we might be exploring on our walk, is the theme of modifying microclimate. So often you want to make a warmer microclimate, but in this sense, this was the very warm weather. It's really lovely to be able to create a cooler microclimate as well, because we were definitely flourishing more in that space over the very hot period. So this is our kind of outdoor living room, and now I'll just show you over the winter time we had a building project where we've been trying to create another indoor space. So I'll just show you in here. So this is where, well, currently we've been running little workshops and so on and so forth. And in the winter time, this can be a place where we do sort of indoor projects, maybe like video making and so on and so forth, craft making. So this has been really dominated our whole winter experience, and now it's lovely to have a finished room. It's still a bit of chaos to be tidied up, but anyway. So that's our indoor space. And now I'll switch around. So this is another space that we've just been finishing here, which is it's basically a modified what was a lean-to greenhouse, and we've been training these lovely grapevines, so that there'll be lovely dappled light all through the space. And then we just went down to the local timber yard and got this 11 by 4 foot redwood table. So this is all part of enhancing the social yield of our forest garden, and it's engaging with the abundance of the land and enjoying the abundance of the social yield that comes with eating food together, harvesting food together, and so on and so forth. So this is all part of the tour of the garden. I guess this is the hearth area. Now this is a little greenhouse that we've had up for many years. So up here you can see the abundance of grapes, which is really lovely. And then these have been absolutely fantastic. These are the most efficient way to water any crops. So these are like raised beds, and then you'll see here that there's a bowl of water with a little cistern in it, and it's fed by a little pipe you can see to the left at the back, and that keeps the constant level of water feeding through the IBC container, and that means there's just a constant supply of water. You don't get fluctuations in the water level. And then we also put liquid feed in there as well. And what that means for tomatoes, you can see doing really well, and you've got completely dry soil on the surface, so this prevents a lot of the diseases that tomatoes are rather prone to. And then these things that we've been propagating, these are that's a cold hardy, sorry, it's going to come to the a cold hardy ginger from Japan. And so we've got a whole selection. I just divided up some tubers recently, and this is a lily, which has amazing edible tubers, so I'm propagating those. These are quite exciting down here. They're just nothing much to see, but these are actually cold, relatively cold hardy avocados, so they'll take about a 5-degree frost. So some of our microclimates should be able to grow for these. There are actually avocados which will take even a greater frost than those, but they're not really able to get those. This one here, these are actually dandelions, and these are actually a much broader leaf dandelion, and also have really thick stems, because the stems are highly edible as well. Kind of bitter, but we've kind of started to really quite enjoy these more bitter flavours. I won't show you everything because it's just far too much. These are lotuses that I've been growing. So this is a Russian lotus. So there's lots of edible parts. The flower parts are edible, and also the roots are edible. So this, as it grows in Russia, it should be quite hardy in the conditions here. So I'm planning to grow those in our pond. We've got a leaf just beginning to come out of the water. And then this one here, this is a sea kale. So I'm getting different varieties of sea kale coming into the garden, so all very exciting. So that's our greenhouse. And then out here, this is kind of an area where we've been propagating various plants. So that's various rhubarbs that we've been creating, and that's down here, that's a ground cover raspberry. So that creates a thick carpet of raspberry. This is a selection of pond plants that are propagating here in that space. And now just moving on to some of the infrastructure. So this is actually a combination here to the left. There's a solar hot water heater which has about a 300 litre water tank on the top. And so over this warm weather we've been getting boiling water every day coming out of that. And then to the right, that is an old bulk orange juice container that we've repurposed into being a shower. And so that connects with the solar hot water, so we have solar showers, and it's kind of really lovely way to spend to have a shower outdoors. This scores an error, so that's nothing really coming up so far. But this is a fabulous root crop, a perennial root crop, and you can also eat the vegetation, the greenery that grows on top. This might be of interest to many of you. This is runner beans, and runner beans are potentially perennial. So as you know, in a forest garden, it's a perennial system, guilds of perennial plants. So it's probably a little bit marginal how successfully they'll survive through the winter, but it's worth a try. And so the idea is plant them beneath, and the roots will provide nitrogen to the bottom of the plant, and then the tree structure will provide a means for the runner beans to grow up, providing yet another yield of the system. So what you see here, this is fuki. So this is another plant that we've been enjoying eating this winter, the summer, the spring. So the stalks are highly edible, so it's used a lot in Japanese cuisine, and also the leaves can be used as a vegetable as well. And they've been struggling a little bit with the very dry weather. Little bit of a potential for it to be a bit invasive, so we've got that in the middle of our garden, so we mow around it to prevent it running away. And Gallica, which is really lovely. So maybe now I'll just move on to our vegetable. This is our herb garden. So you can see here we've got we've created raised beds out of caterpillar tracks. Got 3 sort of keyhole beds there, and these just work so fantastic. And you see this little they've got little slits in them which you can plant things like strawberries in the middle. So this has really completely been life-changing in terms of how many herbs find their way onto our dinner plates. And then a few nettles there, and then this is another interesting, and these are actually another lovely vegetable, which is Solomon seal. So this is another early spring crop. So this, that's the yurt that I did my 4.5 year retreat in. So it's probably made that about 30 years ago, and it's still the same cover. So that cover has lasted all that time, which is pretty incredible. At the moment we're using it to store various things, but we do have people stay in it. And then there's our compost toilets, which is surrounded by Leylandii, so curved Leylandii walls. And then there's a stairway that comes up through the hedge to our compost toilets. And so there it is. Yeah, so this is the bit like the hearth of the forest garden, and then just turn around, and this is a little woven structure that's surrounding our hot tub. So not a hot tub at the moment, it's basically just receiving water that we use to fill watering cans, and then there's a mushroom log that's hydrating there at the moment. And then and so this hot tub is filled with the solar heated hot water, but also there is a furnace there should we want to maybe if there's not enough sun or we want to keep it going for longer. So now we're coming through into sort of zone 2 of the forest garden, and this is our perennial vegetables, our annual vegetables more, although we do have some perennials here. So for example, this is Hablitzia, which is the tree spinach, beautiful tasting tree spinach. So we've been preparing this ground for planting out. So we've tried to plant as many annuals which are self-seeding. So although a forest garden's primary perennials, self-seeding annuals are another possibility. And then so just here, this is we've got a lot of wood pigeons around here. This is the Dormington's kale, which I showed you before. And then these so these are dahlias, and most people are familiar with dahlias as an ornamental, but they actually have lots of lovely edible parts. The flowers are edible, and also they're originally grown in South America as a root crop. So there's been lots of trials and selections going back to them, seeing them as a food crop and finding out which ones taste the best. So this is a selection of some of the best tasting dahlias. Comfrey bed. This is an interesting one. This is a groundnut, which grows a kind of climber, but underground it's got a big tuber which is really high in protein. So that's the groundnut. We do have a few annuals, but very interestingly what we discover is the annuals are so much work in comparison to perennials. So by and large we are just moving more and more over to perennials. So that's what I'm going to focus on maybe in the tour of the garden. So these are yacons, which is a Peruvian ground pear. So this will grow 5-6 foot tall, and they'll have a great big cluster of tubers, maybe 15 kilos of a sweet, crisp, edible tuber, which will stay fresh for the whole winter. So that's a really lovely thing to be growing. Now what you can see here, when we got the land, as I said, it was originally a perfectly flat field, but what we quite early on in the piece we made this earth bank to shelter the vegetable garden. But what we discovered was that after the last frost, or the first frost of the year, there was a very heavy frost around the whole garden, but radiating in front of this bank, to the south of the bank, it was frost free. So I realised that this was a way to create enhanced microclimates. And during this hot weather, these banks have just been, in fact I can feel it as I'm walking towards it, that it's still got the heat, sort of a heat black battery from the hot weather that's still radiated out into the space. So it's several degrees warmer. And so what we've got here, this is a mulberry called Pakistan, and I don't know if you can see, it creates fruit. That fruit's about 2 inches long, but they can create fruit 3 to 4 inches long. So this is actually the first fruit this has ever created. So that's pretty exciting for us. So maybe that is a sign that the microclimates are working. So the microclimates obviously extend the possibility of what you might be able to grow. So I showed you before the avocados I was growing, the avocado seeds. So this would be the sort of place that you'd want to plant your avocados, for many reasons. One is that it's obviously warmer, but also it's protected from the cold northerly winds. So that's lots of additional benefits. I'll just alert you to this. This is actually a big puffball from that's been growing in this vegetable garden, and I tap it from time to time just to release some more spores, and hopefully we'll get more puffballs growing in the garden. So this is another mulberry tree, and we've just been sort of amazed by the absolute phenomenal crop that's growing on this mulberry this year. So this tree is absolutely covered in mulberry fruits. An apple tree. So this is our kind of vegetable garden. It has got a bit weedy because we got a bit distracted. This actually is the remains of a edible dock, so I've just cut it down, so all these seeds should be planting more edible dock back into the ground. I think that's a josterberry, and these crazy things here are Babington leeks. So these have been providing us with leeks since middle of winter, and maybe for about 4 months of the year. So amazing perennial leek, and then you can eat when these seed heads crack open. They've got little baubles on them which you can eat as a garlic substitute. You can also eat the roots as well, so a highly useful plant. So this is another sea kale. I think this is my favourite, one of my favourite vegetables of all. Just the flavour is just so nutty and crisp and succulent. So this is grown as an ornamental, a sea kale. So we've got a whole little stash of those there. These are hibiscus plants which grow hibiscus flowers, which are lovely to eat and very ornamental to look at as well. Sweet Sicily, it's all going to seed now for the dry weather. This is Alexander's, which is another kind of herb come vegetable. And I'll just show you in the background that's a blackberry which has just finished flowering. The bees were going crazy a few days ago, but you see the incredible abundance of fruit that's growing on this. So these are thornless blackberries. And then right next to that is this is called Turkish rocket. So really lovely edible vegetable, and you can eat the flower stems a little bit like broccoli. So you can see all those yellow flowers through there are Turkish rocket. And that is Welsh onions. So that, as I said, this is where we come for our vegetables. This is another mulberry here. So this is how we prepare the ground. The Mypex, put the Mypex down for 6 months or so, and then this prepares the ground, kills off the grass, and then we can plant new crops into the space. This is a lovely one here. This is actually a sea cabbage. So I got the seed for this down on the coast locally to me, and that was about 5 years ago, so they're just about coming into the end. So I'm going to try and save the seed from this when it sets seed, and then we'll set up another batch of them. This is a Juneberry or Amelanchier. So there's been lots of plant breeding with these. So these are fruiting for the first time. So that's a really exciting crop. So just coming around. Oh fuck. Oh yes. Sorry about that. I thought I'd stopped recording. Pardon my French. So just going to show you here. These are daylilies. So I've got a whole selection of different daylilies. So they're all growing in amongst the weeds, but they'll persevere because they're pretty brutal, pretty hard. And just right next to that, that's a horseradish going there, and that's sorrels. So tangy flavoured sorrels. So you can see you just walked around the garden foraging for what you need. This slightly sad specimen here, I'm sure I can find a better one. Oh, before I look at that, this here is a salt bush. So you can eat the leaves of this to put in a salad or whatever, and it provides us a salty flavour. And then this is a perennial broccoli, which never really flourished for me yet. So yeah, I'm constantly experimenting. I don't quite know why they're not flourishing, but got to keep trying. So these are climbing roses, which you can eat the flower petals there. So along here, this is a line of palm kales, and then next door to them is gladioli. They're looking a little bit drought stressed, but the gladioli flowers are really beautiful to eat. And then just a whole selection of edible flowers along here. So just here we've got This is my most expensive plant I've ever bought, and this is actually a nutmeg, Japanese nutmeg, and very, very slow growing, and it's looking a little bit stressed at the moment. So I'm going to really make sure I look after this little plant. But yes, produces lovely little nutmegs eventually. And then this is a climber, sort of Akebia. So this is supposed to be a very vigorous flock climber. So it's my 4th time to try and grow this. Haven't been very successful with that so far. But this one's looking like it's doing alright right now. So that's gives you a sense of that's the only space of our garden where we have all the different layers of plants. So I'll give you sort of an overview. So the mulberries and lots of things going to seed right now, but pretty much everything in there is edible. And then to the left we've got sea buckthorn, and then various raspberries mixed in with nettles. So this is our plum tree, so quite a good crop of plums going on. That's in front of us there is a honeyberry, so that's just finished fruiting. Incredibly intense flavoured berries. So that's a Babington leek just beginning to show its little flowers, which will become baubles, which is the garlic substitute. More plums, and this is another thornless blackberry arching over the way.